so much for signing on. Um, well, how do we start this? Welcome to Humanity Chats. This is Marjy. I'm the author of The Shimmigrant and Same Elephants. I like to write about diversity, human stories. I've written about immigration, and I like to talk, and that's why we have Humanity Chats. Before we get started today, I just had a message for everybody. The COVID numbers are going up, friends. We don't know what the truth is out there, and this is not a political issue. Please listen to the medical experts. We need to stay alive. This is serious. I saw an article in the paper today, in my local paper, and it was talking about the numbers in the hospital. The numbers are going up. So friends, please be careful out there and be your neighbor's keeper. Well, that was a somber note, but it was very necessary. I think I'm going to invite the former congressman to the chat room. As you all know, it's Congressman Trey Gowdy, and we're going to be talking about his book, Unified. That's a book that he wrote with Senator Tim Scott, and he has an upcoming book this August. We will be open for questions. He's going to talk about unity and friendship. And so at this time, I'm going to invite the former congressman. Let's go.
Hey there.
Hello. Hi, it's so good to see you.
It's good to see you too. Thank you for having me. I'm sorry I look like a bum.
Well, you look great. You look just fine. It's good to see you smile, and I am truly honored to have you here tonight.
Well, thank you. I'm honored to be with you.
Well, people have heard about former Congressman Trey Gowdy, but I bet there are some people here who haven't heard the kind of introduction that maybe I gave about you. We would like to learn more about you.
Well, basically, I'm a husband and a father. I was a prosecutor for 20 years, and in the last couple of years, there's been this view of prosecutors that I don't share. It was a very rewarding job working on behalf of crime victims, and prosecutors actually clear more people than defense attorneys do. Over half the cases in my office wound up being dismissed because of insufficient evidence. So I love that job. I did that for 16 years, both federal and state. And, I ran for Congress. I treasure the relationships that I made up there, but it just wound up not being a job that I really enjoyed a lot. So I'm back in South Carolina and trying to be a good husband, good father. We have 2 children, son that finished law school that plays golf for a living, basically. And a daughter who's in law school that wants to undo every conviction I ever got as a prosecutor. She's on the other side.
Well, that's great. You have brilliant kids, and it's nice to know that you have healthy conversations at home.
You know what? I value the relationship more than I do whatever the issue we're talking about. I got a phone call yesterday morning. I won't call his name because we're in such a terrible political environment right now. It would actually hurt him for me to use his name. But if I called his name, you would know exactly who he was. And he's a really progressive Democrat in the House of Representatives. And I love him to death. He's one of my favorite people in the world. So little known secret, most of us got along almost all of the time up there. We just never let you see that.
Wow. And I did get a little bit of that from reading your book, Unified.
Yeah, well, if you look at the people we had dinner with, it is a really diverse group, and it's diverse from a gender standpoint, from a political orthodoxy standpoint, from a religion standpoint, from a racial standpoint. Those will wind up being the happiest times of my 8 years up there. Just the dinner table, whether it was just me and Tim or whether we had others with us, that is what I will treasure the most when I'm 95 years old and trying to figure out where I left my remote control so I can watch sports if we have sports back by then. I hope we do. Yeah, we had a great time, and I treasure the friendships I had on both sides of the aisle.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I realized that you had dinner with a Hindu and, it was a real diverse dinner table. I would have loved to have an ear at that table.
Well, you would love her. Tulsi Gabbard is one of the kindest, most decent people. Kirsten Sinema, who's a senator from Arizona, I don't even think she has a religious affiliation. I mean, we don't talk a ton of religion, but I think if you were to ask her, she would be unaffiliated. Jason Chaffetz and Mia Love are Mormon or Latter-day Saints. And there are plenty of people, I have no idea what their religious beliefs are, and they're still welcome at the table. I mean, Marjy, if you don't have to try that hard, but if you try, you can find something in common with anyone. It's just our culture seems to like the conflict. But if you said, look, I'm going to try to get along, try to find something in common, you really will find that you got a lot in common with most people.
Well, I believe that. I believe that based on my own experiences. I've had a Jewish roommate. I've had a Muslim who has been a great friend. I have known people who are atheists. I actually wrote a book which came out this March titled Same Elephants, and it's about 4 friends from diverse backgrounds. And so I know that we can all work together. And that brings me to our topic of today, unity. Would you care to share a little bit more about your idea of unity before we head into friendship?
Yeah, I mean, unity to me, I am thrilled that we live in a diverse country. I am glad that we don't all look alike, that we don't all want to live in the same part of the country. I am glad that we don't all pull for the same sports teams or go to the same churches or synagogues or places of worship. However, we have to have something in common more than just geography. I mean, there has to be something. I'm going to the beach next week with my wife and kids. We haven't been in a long time. But I was sitting there, because I'm not a big fan of the beach, sitting there thinking, okay, what's it going to be like? It's going to be a bunch of diverse people that have at least one thing in common. They wanted to get away for a week. They probably have at least 2 things in common. They care very much about their families and their well-being and their health. You mentioned COVID-19. That should be unifying to me, that we want everyone to be healthy and take special precautions to be healthy and take no risk. Marjy, my parents are not going this year for the first time because they're over the age of 80, and it's just not worth the risk. So, whether it's enjoying your family, whether it's wanting a better life for our kids and grandkids, whether it's wanting to live in a neighborhood that is peaceful and safe, I just think we have a lot more in common than we do not in common. The question is, what do we focus on?
Yeah. What do we focus on? Because, I will tell you the truth. I don't always agree with you. There have been times that I have seen you talking on TV and I'm like, oh my God. But, when I read your book, I was like, oh, he is human, just like me. We all bleed red,
Well, I can tell you, Marjy, there are times when I don't agree with myself. I mean, there are times when, and you raise a good point about television. And I'm sure I've done it to others too, although I try really hard not to. We see them for maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and we think that we have a sense of what they are like. And the reality is, it is such a small, it's just a nanosecond of life, what we see. And we do it with celebrities, we do it with athletes. We see them either in a good moment or a bad moment, and we extrapolate beyond that, oh, they must be like this. I've met, I guess the most famous person I've met is the lead singer of a group called U2, and his name is Bono. I mean, President Obama, President Trump, I mean, they're famous, but Bono probably is the most famous I have met. And I was struck, I met him 4 times. I was struck by how humble he is in real life and how thoughtful he is about issues. His big passion is Africa. So, you see him and you think, well, he's just a rock and roll star.
Mhm.
But you spend 30 minutes with him and you realize there's a whole nother dimension to this guy that you'll never get to see. So, look, there are plenty of days I don't agree with myself. So I do not take that. I take that just fine. You've seen me on television and wondered what is wrong with that guy. There are times I've wondered that too. But when you get, it is, Tim and I talk about this all the time. It is hard to hate up close. The better you know someone, the more difficult it is to marginalize and dehumanize and not like that person.
Wow. That's true sometimes, but there are times that when I get to know certain people up close, I'm like, oh my God, just, And this brings me to you're going to the beach, your parents are not coming with you. In your book, Unified, you did talk about your friendship with Senator Tim Scott and how your mom had a sticker of him which was bigger than yours on her car. Would you care to elaborate on your friendship with Senator Scott?
Well, you had to pick the one thing that makes me not like him, which is that my mom likes him more than she does me. He is the best person I have ever met in politics. I've met a lot of really, really good people. Peter Welch, Joey Kennedy, Tulsi Gabbard. On my side, Kevin McCarthy, John Ratcliffe, also in the House. Tim Scott is the best person that I have met in politics, and he's one of the best people I have ever met, period. And he's almost too good for the line of work that he is in right now. And I hate to say that, but he's almost too good of a person for the line of work that he is in. We met in 2010. We did not know each other. So we were in our mid 40s when we met. I didn't know him the first 45 years of life. I did hear of him though. Can I tell you how I first heard of him?
Yes.
I mean, I heard this name Tim Scott and I thought, okay, he's from Charleston. I'm from the other part of the state. And there's an article in the Spartanburg Herald Journal that there's going to be a lieutenant governor's debate at Wofford College, which is a small school in South Carolina, in Spartanburg, liberal arts school. So I think I've heard a lot about Tim Scott. He's running for lieutenant governor. Maybe I'll go hear him. Maybe I won't. Well, I didn't go, and I read the paper the next morning that Tim Scott was a no-show for the lieutenant governor's debate. And I thought, well, this guy's got no future in politics whatsoever. He can't even show up for a debate. Well, little did I know, he wasn't running for lieutenant governor. He was dropping out of that race and running for the United States House of Representatives against Strom Thurmond's son and Carol Campbell's son. I don't know how familiar you are with South Carolina politics, but those are two really, really, really big names in South Carolina, Strom Thurmond and Carol Campbell. Timmy Scott ran against the sons of both of them and won convincingly in Charleston. And then we met in orientation. But the first thing I ever heard about him was he couldn't even bother to show up for lieutenant governor's debate.
Well, I guess that was the wrong impression, right? You had to get to know him better.
Actually, it was the right impression. He decided not to run for that office. He decided that night that he was going to run for Congress. But no, he makes a great first impression. He's so humble. He would have been the class president of all. We had 80-something people in our freshman class. He would have been class president, but he didn't want to run for it. He could have been whatever. He was far and away the most famous person in our freshman class, far and away. But he just has a humility about himself. That's just not what he wanted to do. So he was not the freshman class president, even though he could have been.
That's interesting to know. I did not realize that. I did get some snippets about his humility when I read your book, Unified, but this gives me a different perspective. Well, thank you for your friendship. Now, about unity, you know what's going on in our country right now, and I'm looking at the kind of friendship that you have with Senator Tim Scott. Do you have any words for us ordinary citizens?
Yeah, the advice I would give is to be intentional, to not wait for Tim and I call our friendship an unlikely friendship, given the way we grew up, given the way our life experiences, different parts of the state. We just grew up differently. So it's an unlikely friendship if you're predicting who's going to, wind up. Tim will ultimately preach my funeral. So if you're guessing, who's going to be that close, I'm not sure you would have picked us, given the way we grew up. You have to be intentional about it. You have to make an effort to seek out people that do not look like you, that do not think like you, do not believe what you believe, do not attend the same house of worship that you attend. There's a statistic that Timmy and I used when we were traveling across the country. 2/3 of all Democrats cannot name a single Republican friend that they have. And 2/3 of all Republicans cannot name a single Democrat friend that they have. So that's just politics. That's not religion. That's not anything else. But if all you're doing is talking to people who already agree with you, then it's going to be tough. You don't need to be unified with people that already agree with you. There are no bridges that need to be built there. The bridges need to be built among those of us that don't necessarily have the same belief structure or the same opinions. And I don't know how you build those bridges if you're never around those people.
Yeah. We have to be intentional in our actions. Sometimes it is hard, though, depending on your circumstances, to reach across the aisle. I'm thinking that if you, for example, you're born into a Muslim household, and that's all that you've known all your life, you will try your best maybe to be accepting of your Christian friends, but it is a little bit harder when people are saying negative things about you all the time to just brush it aside. You know what I'm saying?
It is hard, which and I can't imagine what that is like. So let me just say that up front. I can't imagine what it is like to go through life being in any minority group, because I've never been in a minority group. I think if Tim were on with us, he would tell you that he was subjected to some terrible things growing up. And the challenge is not to import those terrible things onto me. Even though it may have been a white person who said it, it may have been a white person who did it, I am a different white person. I didn't do or say any of those things. So if we look at people as individuals, I just don't think it's, look, if someone's a Christian and someone's a Muslim and they're saying negative things about one another, yeah, it's going to be tough to have a really good friendship and relationship. Yeah. But if you're not the one doing it, then that we just cannot hold the individual accountable for what other people have done. I think if Tim were on with us, that is exactly what he would say. I can't blame Trey for what other people that look like him may have done or said.
Yeah.
It's hard, though. I know it's hard. It has to be intentional, and there has to be an element of forgiveness. You have to be willing to forgive.
Yeah, and we have a comment from one of our viewers saying it's just best not to generalize about all people. Her name is Michelle. Yes, thank you for that comment, Michelle.
Yeah, Michelle's right. I mean, we're individuals. I mean, I'm from the South, and I, served as a Republican in Congress. So people begin to think certain things. They just immediately make certain generalizations. And I think it's just best, to the extent you can, to come with a blank slate until you know someone. You and I were talking earlier about our tendency to judge people based on a single interaction, or just not even interacting, just seeing them on television or seeing them in some other setting. That's a small part of who they are. So just, I guess just give people a chance. Everyone's not going to get along. I mean, everyone in Congress doesn't get along. Everyone in the courthouse doesn't get along. But if you just allow the slate to be blank until that person does something that either adds or subtracts to the relationship, I just think we'd be better off.
Well, about judging, I mean, somebody may be watching me now, and I know I'm going to be a little vain here, viewers. I have this beautiful lipstick on and this nice necklace, and it's like, oh my goodness, she got it going on. You don't know that earlier I had a do-rag and I was spreading mulch, and that was what I was doing. I did not look anything like this. And so, yeah.
Look, I mean, people judge us differently based on what we have on. If you go into a store looking the way I do right now, they may not let me in the store. But if you go in a suit, I mean, part of that, unfortunately, is human nature. I mean, we use our eyes a lot. The key is to not let our eyes control our brain. And you never know. You never know the circumstances. If I'd pass by you and what you call a do-rag and what I used to wear out in the yard too. The key is to not try to extrapolate from a small fact pattern into some broader generalization.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Wow, looks like we have lots of questions from our viewers. So we may try to answer a few before we get to talking more about your friendship with Senator Tim Scott. Michael is asking a quick question for Mr. Gowdy. How do you go from being intentional to spreading that thought process to others?
Well, that's a great question. The only thing I can tell you is if you mimic certain behavior, if you act out, my wife is better than me hearing 1,000 sermons. Mm-hmm. In terms of my own spiritual beliefs. Watching her live life is better than hearing 1,000 sermons. Mm-hmm. So I'm writing a book on persuasions, and at some point maybe we can talk about how to persuade, but the most persuasive thing to do is to live out what you claim to believe. Mm-hmm. So if I'm telling you to be intentional and to give people a chance and not try to extrapolate from this that, therefore they must be that, then I got to do it. I got to practice what I preach. And you're not going to, we're not going to solve the racial divide or any other divide in 24 hours. There's not a bill we can pass. There's not a speech you or I could give. It took us several hundred years to get where we are. It's going to take us a little bit of time to get to where we want to be. Mm-hmm. So what can I control? I can control how I act. I can control how I treat other people. I can control whether or not I'll allow others around me to say certain things or use certain words, and whether or not you're going to continue to have a relationship with them. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's true. Earlier this week, I was telling a friend that you were going to be on Humanity Chats. Her name is Adrienne, and she said, oh, I do believe that. And she actually ran into you at the grocery store, and you probably didn't know who she was. She's an African-American woman, and you were pleasant to her. So, yes, so you never know who's watching.
I have been blessed my entire life with friendships that know no divides at all. From the time I was in elementary school until that you mentioned Mr. Littlejohn, I worked at the White House. Not the White House, the warehouse. I've never worked at the White House. I won't be there either unless Tim is the president. The warehouse, the community cash warehouse, there were only 2 white people in the entire warehouse. So every coworker I had was a man of color. And that was as a teenager. So I think, what's the Bible say? There is no Jew, no Greek, no male, no female. I think he would also say there is no black, no white, no brown. I just try to treat people like I would want to be treated. And to me, it is not hard. I like nice people. And if your friend Adrienne spoke to me, then I'm probably going to go out of my way to speak to her. The only thing I don't like at the grocery store is talking about politics, and she probably didn't ask me about politics.
Well, thank you for that. I'll be sure to pass on that message. Hopefully she is watching and she heard you. We have another question, if you don't mind. Well, before that question, I'm gonna put out a compliment that you received. I believe you live out your testimony in life. Be the best you can be. Have love in your heart to give and forgive others and leave no regrets. That's by Judy. So people are listening. They're hearing you. One of the viewers actually said that Congressman Gowdy agreeing to do this with Marj gives me great hope for race relations. Well, I would like to let that viewer know that Congressman Gowdy is best friends with Senator Tim Scott. And so it's not just by him agreeing to do this with little old me, but his friendship is also a testament to race relations.
Well, it's not just Tim. You and I are both friends with Hope. Hope and I work together at the solicitor's office. I have a law partner who happens to be a woman of color named Sharia Clark, that is one of my favorite human beings on the face of the earth. I like good people. I guess humans like to have some line of demarcation. We like to have an us versus them. And the only us I want to be part of are people of good conscience. That's the only group that I'm interested in seeing a line of demarcation. You know, I was a prosecutor. I don't like people that hurt other people. I don't like folks that take things that don't belong to them. But that's about the only line that I try to live by in life. Are you a person of good conscience, or are you not a person of good conscience? And that's my goal. So I've been blessed to have relationships with every religious group, racial group, ethnic group that you can imagine, and my life is better because of it.
Well, that's good to know. Talking about Miss Clark, I did listen to your podcast. Is it Tuesdays with Trey?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
For the record, I listened to a few. There were some that I did not like, but I did like the one with Miss Clark, and I think you did a great job going into race relations and talking about the current climate.
Well, she's very smart. She's probably more conservative than I am, so but that's fine. I mean, she can be whatever she wants to be. She was homeschooled, and she is an authentically conservative person with a political orthodoxy, but she's more driven by faith than anything else, which is probably why I like her. And whatever I said on my podcast that you did not like, I may be wrong, and you are welcome to correct me. I also try to go through life being open-minded to folks convincing me that I am wrong.
Well, we cannot always agree on the same things. I tend to be in the middle, and so sometimes I cringe when I hear some of the things that people on the right are saying, and I also tend to cringe sometimes depending on what the left says, and so it makes things difficult for me, you know. But I have a friend, Michelle Stone, who told me to broaden my lens. And I've been trying to do that. You know, the old me probably would not have listened to Tuesdays with Trey. But
Michelle Stone, the author, Michelle Stone?
Yes, the author, Michelle Stone.
I like her a lot. Yeah, she's a very talented writer. I have family members that don't agree with me on any political issue at all. And I value the relationship more than I do whatever that political issue is.
Well, the comments there's so many comments. I can't even follow the comments anymore. Viewers, you see my eyes moving left to right. I'm listening and I'm looking at you, but those comments, just go on to the Marjy TV Facebook page, read those comments, people telling Mr. Gowdy to run for president, people asking him why he left DC. There's so many comments on there. And so go on there and take a look. Now, I think we've been talking, trying to address some of these questions and comments. I want us to go back to your book, Unified, and your friendship with Mr. Scott. And a few years ago, something terrible happened in South Carolina. That shooting put a dagger in our hearts. Would you want to talk about it? I read how Mr. Scott's reaction, and then I read about your reaction as well. I must say that it brought me to tears. Would you want to talk about that and how you guys held each other up during that time?
Well, it may bring me to tears again. It's just, it's one of those things that is so completely inexplicable. You just cannot. Look, I've been around evil before. I've been around really, really bad people. But the thought that you would go into a church where 9 fellow believers, fellow to me, not to him, do exactly what the Bible says to do, which is to welcome in a stranger. And they prayed for him. I mean, my anger was at the perpetrator and my anger was at God for how could you allow this to happen? All they were doing is what you told them to do. And they're at church. And then, Tim's emotions, number one, he's from Charleston. Number 2, he's a black man. Number 3, his family has a connection to that church. Number 4, he was friends with Senator Pinckney. They served together. So I'm not surprised that he called me. I just felt powerless to help. I mean, how can I explain to him how anybody could go in and shoot somebody because of the color of their skin? How can you can't explain that. Tim's chief of staff is Jennifer DeCasper, who is also a woman of color. And I remember talking to her. She's a former prosecutor. How do you explain that act of depravity, of evil, of malice towards people who did nothing to you? So to me, it's still, to be quite honest with you, it's still a faith struggle to me. I just don't know how God could let that happen. And I'm sure people are saying, well, we live in a fallen world. God is God. And if he doesn't want something to happen, it's not going to happen. I'll tell you what I did that Sunday. I went to Charles J.J. Jackson's church. I told my wife, I'm not going to our church. I want to go to Pastor Jackson's church because that's a black church, Cornerstone. Mm-hmm. And they're going to be mad just like I'm mad. And that's what I want to be around. And of course, that's not what he was. That's not what he did. He was grief stricken. He was sad beyond. I mean, that word doesn't capture what he is. But this element of forgiveness that the family members of the 9 victims, to tell the perpetrator, we forgive you, not only did it unify and really save our state from a very, very difficult, what could have been a very difficult time, it just kind of served as a testimony to what the 9 people believed before they were shot, which is in the power of forgiveness. So I'm not there yet. Tim is. He's a much better Christian than I am. I'll tell you this too, Marjy. There were only 2 people back there with Tim Scott before we had the memorial service. President Obama spoke at the memorial service in Charleston, and Tim understandably wanted to be alone before that service because it was going to be incredibly emotional. So I was back there with him, and that lady you mentioned from Hawaii, a Hindu from Hawaii named Tulsi Gabbard, was back there with him. That is not her faith, but you never would have known it. Watching her interact during that memorial service, singing the old gospel songs, dancing when she felt led to dance, saying amen. So she's in another religious environment, not the one that she's familiar with. Mm-hmm. But you never could tell because that was what she wanted to do, to show honor and respect to the 9 people, even though she has a different faith structure. So it's still, Tim, it's been 5 years, and Tim talks about it like it was last night. It will You're from South Carolina. It will never, our state will never be the same because of what happened.
Yeah, yeah, you wouldn't. I remember watching President Obama singing "The Amazing Grace." Um, you know,
It
every
was
time.
beautiful. It was beautiful.
Mhm, mhm,
And I just wonder why the unity has to come after the tragedy.
mhm.
There was a lot of unity in that room. Of course, it didn't last long because, you know, some people liked the speech, some people didn't like the speech. Some people want to take one sentence out of it. I mean, that's just the world we live in. I mean, we just can't stand unity, apparently. But what I would like to do is have those conversations, that unity before the tragedy, not after, and maybe we can avoid the next tragedy.
Yes, yes. What you're saying is so true. You know, it behooves me. I don't know how we're going to get that unity. We are so divided right now. And if only we would love our neighbors as ourselves, we could put our differences aside and stick together. I tell you this story. I was in London, was it 2012? I don't remember. It was the Olympics. And I went to watch a soccer game, and it was the US playing. I don't remember if it was Canada, or we won. Ultimately, we won that game, and we were out there dancing, shouting, singing. My husband is a quiet man. He was almost thrown out of the stadium because of the way he was behaving. And it was just beautiful. We saw some kids who were from Warford College in England, and we were all one unit. We were all Americans. We were singing on the streets of London, and it was just beautiful that people from all walks of life had come together just to support the US women's soccer team. And I wish that we could all come together like that before a tragedy hits. I really don't know. It takes all of us to be able to achieve that. And I don't know how we're going to do it. There's been enough meetings, enough talks. It's, as you said in Unified, it's our heart that's going to help us change this situation and turn things around. And it even takes me back to your book, Unified, where you went to Cornerstone Baptist, and an African American couple invited you to sit with them, and you thought that they knew who you were, because then you had people coming to say hello to you, and the lady asked you who you were because she realized that this man was probably famous, right? You want to tell us that story?
Well, I mean, I went, and I know some folks at Cornerstone. Obviously, I've got friends that's actually pretty close to my house. But this couple with two small children kind of met me. I mean, it's an African American church, so there are not a ton of white people there. I may have been the only one that Sunday. I don't remember, but there weren't many.
Mm-hmm.
So right after Dylan Roof goes to an African American church and shoots 9 fellow believers, I show up at Cornerstone, and you would think that there would be suspicion. You would think that people would be looking at you. And this couple came up, and they were so nice, and they invited me to sit with them. And I just figured they knew, well, he used to be, the district attorney, or, we know his dad took care of our kids, or we know his wife. I just figured that's why they were so nice to me. Even, that close in time after another white man shows up at a black church and commits an act of evil, I just figured they knew who I was. And then we sat down and people came over and spoke. And finally, the wife said, "I'm sorry, I feel like we're supposed to know who you are, but we have no idea who you are." And what dawned on me was she invited me to sit with her family and her kids, not having any idea that I was a former district attorney, or that my dad was a baby doctor, or my wife is a school teacher. She just welcomed a stranger, even that close in time after what happened at Mother Emanuel. So yeah, that had a profound impact, that somebody could be that welcoming and that non-suspicious, even a week after something terrible had happened also in our state. It was humbling because I asked myself, do I do that? Am I that welcoming? Am I that encouraging and inclusive? It was a purity. I was actually happy that, she had no clue who I was, and then it dawned on me, but yet you invited me anyway. You didn't know who I was. Just some strange white guy at your church.
Yeah, I wish there were more people like that in this world that we live in. We have become.
I think there are. I think there are a lot of people like that. I just don't think they make the news. I think most people are good people, like you. It's just a question of what we see and what we devote our time to. You mentioned sports. Sports is incredibly unifying, but now there's an element of politics in sports. The pandemic should be unifying because we're all trying to stay safe and healthy, and we want that for everybody. But there's a political element to that. School starting, whether or not it should start or should not start, is a healthcare decision. We should let the healthcare experts do that. But we've injected a political undertone. We've got to find a way to either tell ourselves or tell others we're not going to let politics ruin everything in our culture.
Yeah. Wow. True words from a politician.
Recovering one.
Recovering. Well, I never would have thought that you would have said those words. We need to reevaluate our priorities, and yes, it's true. One of the reasons why I keep Humanity Chats going is that I want to highlight everyday citizens. We live our lives through the lens of this famous person or this rich person there, where there are ordinary citizens doing great things. This past Sunday, I spoke with a kid who has been dancing, 15-year-old African-American male. He's been dancing to raise money for kids impacted by COVID-19. We don't hear stories like that. We get to see people's fancy homes and them doing their TikTok videos, and we need to see more of our everyday citizens, and everybody has a story. Sometimes you're carrying a burden and you think you're alone, but really you're not. You just have to hear somebody else and you realize that, oh my goodness, this person's cross is probably bigger than mine, or oh my goodness, this is what I can do because this person was able to go through it. And it's amazing that when we open ourselves up, we are able to learn much more. And I believe that you opening your heart to let Senator Tim Scott in, you have learned so much from him and him from you as well.
I don't know that he's learned anything from me except a few words that his mom wouldn't let him say growing up. But he has changed my life. He will preach my funeral. I am quite certain he will outlive me. He just got off of Diet Coke and started drinking sparkling water, so I think that's going to add a few years to his life. He's a little bit younger than I am, but he and I were at a funeral together in Georgia about a month ago. There was an evangelist named Robbie Zacharias that passed away, and Tim wanted me to go to the funeral with him, and I said, listen, you're going to preach my funeral, and that's the highest compliment I can give you, is I want you to be the last person to say anything about me. And he has changed I don't know whether I've helped him or not, but he has made me a better person, and I love him.
Well, thanks for sharing these words from your heart. But my mom has this saying, touch wood, meaning this thing should not happen, or over my head. You have mentioned your funeral too many times, and so you can hear me knocking on the wood. May you have long life. May you have long life. Yeah.
I've had a great life. I don't want to check out anytime soon, but you know, when you prosecute homicide cases for a living, it teaches you to appreciate every single day, because there's so many people either in car wrecks or illness or disease that didn't make it as long as I made it, Marjy. I rode a school bus with a 13-year-old kid that never made it to 14. So I've been lucky. I've had a great life. I'd like to live long enough to see Dallas win another couple of Super Bowls, but you don't agree with that?
Well,
you don't pull for the same team God pulls for?
No, people don't like my team. They think we are the devil. I'm a New England Patriots.
No, that's impossible.
Yeah, let's go.
You're nice of a person. That's impossible.
Yeah, people, I think I went to church one time and somebody was saying something about the devil and they referred to the Pats, and I was like, oh no, that's me. Yeah.
They're winners, and sometimes people don't like winners.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, we've been talking for 47 minutes. We don't want the time to pass without talking about your upcoming book. Now, we know we can't spill the details, but folks have to know Mr. Gowdy has a book coming out August 2020. And so would you want to just give us a little, don't spill the beans, but tell us about your book?
Well, Marjy, I could have written a book, I guess, I could have written about politics. I could have written it about golf. I wrote it about something I'm passionate about, which is how do you persuade? How do you communicate? Like if you wanted to convince me to change my perspective on something. I mean, my daughter and I talk about the death penalty all of the time. I'm trying to persuade her. She's trying to persuade me. It's not an argument. I can't teach you how to win an argument. You cannot win an argument. But how do you let people know what you believe and why you believe it, and how do you effectively communicate? And part of that is what kind of questions you ask. Mm-hmm. In the courtroom, that's all you do is ask questions. So I'm trying to teach folks in this book how to use questions to be better understood, to be heard, and effectively persuade and communicate. I'm not telling you what to believe from a religious, political, cultural standpoint. You can believe whatever it is you want to believe. But if you want others to understand and come closer to your way of thinking, how do you do that? How do you structure your argument? How do you impeach what the other person is saying? How do you use questions to make your point? So it is a book about persuasion. And I don't know what your Thanksgiving table is like, but my Thanksgiving table, you got people that believe this and believe that and believe this and believe that, and they all get frustrated because they can't seem to get anybody to come around to their way of thinking. I'm going to show you how to do that.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to get to Thanksgiving at my house. Yeah, we all have a different perspective at my house, and sometimes it gets tough. Music and sports brings us together. But if we're not listening to music and dancing or watching sports, we pretty much, I would say one thing, and my son tends to have these opinions, and he would not agree with me, and and my husband also is in his own world, and I'm thinking, God, why am I here? So you
raise a great point. Because, I listen to my wife talk to my two kids. I've listened to it ever since they were born. And we have a tendency to want to just tell people what we believe, but we don't use questions. So what I would do with your son is I would ask him a series of questions, because you can't make him change his mind. Only he can change his mind. But if you use questions the right way, you can force him to reevaluate or concede the weaknesses in his argument. And you don't have to tell him what you believe. You just use the power of questions. And obviously, I did it in a courtroom you got to get them all in a courtroom. You got to get all 12, and you got to get them beyond a reasonable doubt. And you got to do it using questions. So I'm trying to teach. If my wife wants our two kids to make up their bed in the morning, I got to help her be able to effectively communicate that, because so far we ain't doing a good job.
Well, yeah, probably me walking around talking about how people don't lay their beds or clean their rooms. Maybe that doesn't help. Maybe I need a new strategy, and so I'll probably have to get you book.
Well, I'll give you a copy. We talk about how to get kids to make the bed and clean the room. We talk about that, and there. Look, most of your viewers and listeners will never be in a courtroom, and they'll never be in Congress. But you still want to be understood and heard, and you want to effectively communicate what you believe. It's just a different way of doing it when you use questions.
Yeah, we want to be understood. We want to be heard. And viewers, you have heard former Congressman, former prosecutor Trey Gowdy. He's talked about unity, the importance of seeing things from other people's perspective. He's talked about friendship, his deep friendship with Senator Tim Scott, things they've been through together, and how they've learned to appreciate each other. We've talked about his books. His book Unified is a book that he wrote with the senator. And then he has a book coming out this August, which is going to be helpful when it comes to persuasion. So if you're like me and you need to persuade somebody in your household, in your own household, maybe you should just pre-order that book. I have been on Amazon, and I know that the link is out there, so you could pre-order it everywhere books are sold. And we will be on the lookout for a book signing. Hopefully you would have something local as well. Hub City Bookshop is always available. That would allow other people to come in and maybe get autographed copies of your book when it comes out. I am seeing a lot of comments in the chat room. Oh my goodness, I don't know. Well, we have people saying they're going to buy the book. This is very insightful. The power of questions is unmatched when communicating. Is the core of behaviorally changing, even in my profession, which is health coaching. This is you have a lot of positive comments. Somebody saying they're excited about this book. Sounds like a great one for my English class. Thank you, Trey. Well, teachers out there, I don't know. I haven't read the book, but we don't know if this is going to be appropriate for high schoolers, college students. Check it out. You have all heard Mr. Gowdy. Humanity Chats is an apolitical program. There's so many things that Mr. Gowdy may say or do that I may not agree with, and there may be things that I do or say that he may entirely not accept. But what brings us together is the fact that we are humans. We all want the same thing. We all want the best for this country. We all want unity. We all want people to succeed. And, regardless of your political beliefs, if you are an ally for someone, that is very important. And I believe that Mr. Gowdy has shown us through his chats today that he's willing to be an ally for the voiceless.
Well, I did it for almost 2 decades. There's nobody more voiceless than a domestic violence victim or a homicide victim that can't speak, or a kid who's been abused. So I love fighting for the underdog. I love that job. I wasn't that crazy about being in Congress, other than meeting Tim and some others. So I'll tell you this, Marjy, you and I are going to be friends no matter what you believe. We just got to prioritize it. I am delighted to be around people who do not agree with me on certain issues. And I have changed my own mind on certain issues. And I have to live with myself. I don't have a choice. So just prioritize unity, prioritize getting along, and let's hope we can live in a little less divisive country for our sakes and also for our kids' sake. I don't want to live like we've been living.
Well, there you have it. We want to live in a less divisive country, and the onus is on us, all of us, to contribute to that. Love wins. Love your neighbor as yourself. And it even goes for the COVID pandemic. You see other people suffering. You see people whose families have lost jobs, people who have lost family members. What if it was you? Think about that when you're making decisions. Think about that when you're coughing onto others. Think about the doctors and nurses out there trying to save lives and the fact that they have family members that they have to go back home to. And what if you expose them and they get sick? Who's going to take care of you? We have to be each other's keeper. So, my fellow humans, oh, that's a phrase that I just came up with. Um, let's do good. And thank you so much, Trey. I am so grateful that you've come on board, that you've done this with us, that you've spoken to the people, you've spoken words of wisdom from your heart. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. Unfortunately, we could talk for like 4 hours. There's so much more that we could talk about, but our time is almost coming to a close. And do you have any parting words for our viewers?
Just thank you for having me on. And you've said it twice now. This is the great commandment. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. Love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the laws and prophets. So if we can do that, we will be on our way. If you love other people the way that you yourself would like to be loved and cared for, we'll have a better community. So you said it twice. I don't know very many Bible verses, but I do know that one.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Now, viewers, I'd like to tell you about our upcoming chat for next week. We're going to have Dr. Russell Booker, who was our school district school. Oh, when you're doing these live things, sometimes you don't know.
I do it. He was the superintendent of District 7. He's an amazing human being. His son, Grant, is, I think, at the Naval Academy. Could have gone anywhere he wanted to. Beautiful family. One of my favorite people in the entire world. Miss him.
Wonderful. You could probably be a co-host, Trey. Thank you for chipping in.
Russell wouldn't come on. Dr. Booker wouldn't come on if I was on. He's not going to do that. He's a wonderful, wonderful human being.
Yes, and he's the founder of One Acorn. Please tune in next week to listen to Dr. Booker. It's going to be interesting, asking a few questions, especially with what's happening with our schools. It'd be worth your time to join us for that hour. Subscribe to Marjy TV on Facebook and on YouTube. Follow us. Let's keep sharing everyday stories of ordinary citizens. Let's keep lifting each other up. And this has been wonderful. I can't thank you enough, Trey. The best to your family, the best to your lawyer kids, and especially good luck at Thanksgiving. Now that you have the book, you probably be able to persuade everybody.
You know what? I just want to eat, and I actually don't like to argue. So I eat and then go clean the dishes. I don't want to argue, but everybody else seems to want to. You tell your friend Adrian if she sees me at the grocery store to come up and tell me who she is. Okay?
Yes, she actually bakes cakes. It's called, I think it's Sugar Cakes. She's out of Spartanburg, and it's called Sugar Cakes. So check her out. Buy her cake. That would be nice. Yeah, Adrian Savage. That's her name. So,
well, I got a birthday coming up, and I don't think anybody's going to make me a German chocolate cake. So Adrian may be my best hope.
Oh, she makes delicious cakes. I tell you, Trey, you would not regret that. Okay, Adrian, I got you a deal. You got to give me 10% commission.
I'll pay her whatever she wants for a German chocolate cake.
I will send you her contact information so that she can get in touch with you.
Thank you. God bless you, and thank you for letting me be with you tonight.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Well, viewers, it's been a pleasure talking to you tonight, allowing me onto your screens. I hope to see you again next week. Stay prayed, stay safe, and God bless. This is Marjy from Humanity Chats.